Today we are taking a look at even more Nintendo Switch games that you should consider adding to your collection before they get rare and expensive. Let's get into it. Hello there everyone and welcome back to the channel. Its-A-Mii here. Today we are talking about more Nintendo Switch games that you should consider adding to your collection because I, for one reason or another, think they will end up going up in price, and if you want to buy them, now is probably the time. I always say this as a disclaimer in my videos. I am not trying to incite FOMO. People really seem to think I'm trying to game the market so I can sell my copies or something. I don't really know what the whole theory is here. I'm just trying to help fellow collectors buy games that they think look interesting, that they think they will want to play before they go up in price, because there are a lot of Switch games that are starting out very cheap, right? And then they end up getting very expensive, and y'all seem to love these videos. I've done 2 now so far, and the support on these have been amazing, so I think we're making this like a monthly series or something like that. I think you guys would like that. It seems like these videos get more views than anything else I do, so people seem to like my recommendations, basically, is what I'm trying to say, so we're going to continue doing it. I have about 18 games here, one of which is an entire series of games that I have talked about, I believe, in the first one of these videos. However, I wanted to go more in depth because we recently got a new remake announced for one of these games that I think is going to affect the value of every other game in the series significantly, so we'll talk about that a little bit more towards the end of the video. But starting off here, we're going to start with some new releases, one of which is a Nintendo game, and that is Famicom Detective Club Its-A-Mii the Smiling Man. Now, if you follow this channel for anything other than collecting videos, you'll know I did a review of this game, and I adored it. I really wasn't expecting to fall in love with a Famicom Detective Club game so much, but I really enjoyed it, and the fact that it has a physical at all kind of surprises me. This one came out in the time since I released the second video on this series. This retails for $50. It's currently out of stock in a lot of places. If you can find it for a retail price, I would just say buy it, because this is probably the most niche game Nintendo's published on Nintendo Switch so far, at least from a first-party standpoint, right? Aside from maybe another code, but even that I think is less niche than what Famicom Detective Club is, and I cannot imagine this game selling very well. As much as I love it, as much as I think it is, honestly, I would say it's my game of the year so far. At the very least, it's my favorite game Nintendo has published this year. Yes, even over Echoes of Wisdom. This is a game that out of every first-party Nintendo game, I could see getting very expensive, because I just don't think Nintendo's going to reprint it. I really just don't think they're going to reprint it. Maybe a very limited printing, but if you are interested in Famicom Detective Club, if you're not familiar with it, it is a visual novel, and it is so good. It is definitely the darkest game Nintendo has made. It kind of starts out a little lighthearted, but then you get into some serious dark themes, and by the end of it, you're just kind of left speechless. And this is a game that has kind of just stuck with me since I beat it over a month ago now. Games rarely stick in my mind the way that Its-A-Mii has. If you want a good story, if you are into, dark mystery stories, I highly recommend it. Even beyond just the collecting aspect, it is just a fantastic visual novel, a fantastic game, and it is one that I think will probably not stay in print very long and will probably end up going up in price in the very near future. And while we're on the subject, these are already a little bit expensive, but if you are interested in them, I might as well go ahead and let you know they exist. In Japan, they actually release special editions for Famicom Detective Club, so here's the special edition for Its-A-Mii. This one's going for $110 right now, I want to say. It's a pretty cool special edition. I did an unboxing of it. It has a huge meaty art book, as well as some other goodies in there, including a little paper bag mask to match Its-A-Mii here, which is fun. So that one just came out. It's not very expensive. However, there is also a physical for the original game as well, only released in Japan. So here's the standard copy for this. Now, unfortunately, I know you're typing your comment. Does it have English on the cartridge? No. And unfortunately, this does not have English on the cartridge. I don't know if they ever release it fully standalone, because they also did release this special edition in Japan that I'm holding upside down. But they released these 2 special editions for, they released this one for the remakes of the first 2 games, and then they also released the Its-A-Mii one. This special edition, around the time that Its-A-Mii got announced, went up in price a ton. Right now, Price Writing has it listed at about $175, I think, but if you look on eBay, you might be able to get it for that cheap, but I've seen mostly in the $250 to $300 range. I bought this maybe a year or 2 ago for $90, and it seems to have only gone up. So if you are interested in Nintendo published games, but also this very niche franchise that Nintendo has decided to pursue this generation, I would say don't wait. The Japanese copy of the first 2 games remade, that's whatever, because they don't have English on the cartridge. That's only if you're a super diehard fan and you want to collect it, right? But if you are interested in trying out the series, I highly recommend picking up and trying out Its-A-Mii before it gets super expensive. Next up, we have another new release, and that is the Ace Attorney Investigations Collection. This one just came out earlier this month. Now, I've talked about Ace Attorney in the past, I believe, in these videos. I think I talked about Great Ace Attorney Chronicles and how I can kind of see that one going up in price, as well as the Apollo Justice trilogy. The Ace Attorney games don't get super expensive, but like we've seen on DS, like they push, you know, $50, $60, $70 on DS at times. Now that these collections have come out, those have certainly come down a little bit, right? Now that they've kind of released them and untrapped them from the DS. But this is one that I'm just getting the vibes, man. I'm getting the vibes from this one. This is a very late life Switch release. It is a remake of 2 spin-off DS games, one of which was never localized in America. It's not starring the main character, Phoenix Wright. It's starring Miles Edgeworth. I just don't see this one staying in print very long. Maybe I could be completely off base here, but if you are an Ace Attorney fan, it retails for $40. That's a great price for 2 great games. This one's giving me bad juju, man. Basically, this one comes down to me feeling this one out, and I just feel like this one's not going to be cheap, or at the very least stay in print for very long. Maybe it'll stay down in that, you know, $30, $40 to $50 price range for a while on the aftermarkets, but I just don't think this will be in stores very long. It just does not feel like one of those games that'll stick around. And unlike the Apollo Justice trilogy that came out earlier this year, Investigations 2 had never been localized. So whereas with the Apollo Justice trilogy, all of those games were on the 3DS localized, a lot of us had a chance to play them growing up on the 3DS. Investigations 2 is basically a new, unique game, at least for America, that we never got before. So it's not just games that you can play on other platforms. One of these, you literally have no option to play on another platform, at least if you are in the West. So definitely consider picking this up if you are an Ace Attorney fan. All right, this next one I've had my eye on for a while. I finally decided to take the plunge on it. I have not played it yet, but I love anime games. You know me. I love my Dragon Ball, my Naruto, my Jujutsu Kaisen, right? I love all that stuff. There's an anime game that released on Switch earlier this year. It got a retail release in Europe as well as Japan, and then also has like one of those Asian English releases. I finally decided to pull the trigger because there are simply not that many copies listed on eBay. I believe you can get the PEGI version for about $50, I want to say, but it really ranges. I paid $65 for this version that is, like I said, one of those kind of Asian English releases that basically has no rating on the front, and that is Spy Anya Operation Memory. So this is a Spy Family game that released earlier this year. I heard nobody talk about it. I believe it's kind of like just a slice of life game, basically, which is fitting for the Spy Family series. I have no idea if this game is good. I have no idea if people like this game. I'm not sure if it's something that maybe Spy Family hardcore fans really enjoy, but then if you actually play it and you're not like a huge Spy Family fan, maybe you won't really like it that much. Basically, you play as Anya doing little tasks and stuff with the family and the dog. And yeah, this is a really weird release. I don't know why it didn't get an ESRB. It is Bandai Namco, as they do most anime licensed games. I would say if you're a Spy Family fan, probably check this out sooner than later, because like I said, there's just simply not that many copies listed on eBay, and a lot of them are stock photo copies. And for me, I always try to get the cleanest copy I can get if it's not, you know, an ESRB copy. So for me, that means getting these versions that do not have any ratings on the front. It does have the text centered on the spine, like a European copy would. But yeah, sometimes these are really hard to track down, so if you're interested in this, I would say do it sooner than later. Next up, we have 2 indie games from Fangamer I want to talk about, and right now, they're both pretty cheap. I believe you can get both of these for under $30. So starting off, we have Undertale. You know it. You love it. It's Undertale. Undertale is one of the most popular games of all time. It's definitely one of the most popular indie games of all time. Basically, take Earthbound, modernize it a little bit, and you get Undertale. I have not finished Undertale. I played a little bit of it back when it came out, and it's one of those games that like haunts me a little bit of like, I should really give this a full playthrough. But this is one where it was kind of limited because it was through Fangamer, though I do believe they did publish it and release it in Best Buys across America as well. But this is like a pretty high quality physical release because it actually has some goodies inside. It has a little booklet that's meant to look like one of those little golden books that you would read growing up, right? So that's kind of cool. Here, I'll take this out and show you. Oh God, I'm dropping flyers for Fangamer. But basically, it's just this little storybook based on the game, or something like that, I believe, right? So not the greatest thing, but it's kind of cool. So yeah, if you're an Undertale fan, I don't know how much longer Fangamer will stock this. I believe it is still like in stock on their website. So right now, not something to really look at, but I would say 10 years from now, Undertale physical copies, like, they're not going to re-release this on Switch 2 physically. I really doubt it. So this is probably going to be like the copy that is most coveted when it comes to having a physical copy of Undertale. So I wanted to shout that one out, as well as in a pretty similar vein. I know much less about this one, but I've always been very intrigued by it, is Omori. This one was also done by Fangamer. The only thing I know about Omori is that it is similar to Undertale, and it is very sad. That's basically That's basically all I know, but I always thought it looked really high quality, really good, and I've wanted to try it out. I think I bought it at PAX West a year or two ago. So this is one that I think you can get for like $30 right now. Like I said, very similar to Undertale. If you're a fan of Undertale, I would say look at some videos on this, look at some reviews. But maybe it's a game that's best gone into blind based on what I've heard about the story. So yeah, I wanted to shout those two out, two fan gamer games that I think maybe not like in the near future, but since they're so beloved, right? Like Undertale, one of the most popular indie games of all time. Omori, a very popular indie game that I feel like, as big as it is still not like, it's not Undertale level, right? So that one I would say would probably go up in price first, if anything, because there would be less copies of it simply because it's not Undertale, right? So I wanted to shout out both of those because I think they are both games in a pretty similar vein that I could see going up, maybe not in the near future, like I said, but in the distant future because they are so beloved by fans of indie games. This next one is a Capcom game that recently saw a lot of activity when it comes to going up in price and then coming down in price. I believe Video Games Plus actually reprinted it, so right now might be the best time, the final time really, to get it at a affordable price, and that is the Capcom Fighting Collection. This one came out back, I want to say, in 2022, and this includes a ton of Capcom fighting games. So it includes Darkstalkers, Night Warriors, Vampire Savior, Vampire Hunter 2, Vampire Savior 2, Red Earth, which is the first time that one was released on home consoles, Cyberbots, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, Hyper Street Fighter 2, as well as Super Gym Fighter Mini Mix. So this is a crazy collection of games. It's not like any of like the megatons, right? You're not getting your Marvel vs. Capcom 2 in this. You're not getting Power Stone in this, but it's a lot of like the weirdo ones. And I say weirdo, I mean Darkstalkers is pretty popular, but like Vampire Hunter 2, Vampire Savior 2, even Hyper Street Fighter 2, like these are not what people think of when they're thinking of like the core fighting games from Capcom. So it's a pretty wide variety here in this collection. This one saw a lot of activity, like I said, though, where I saw it going for like $80-$90 on eBay one week, and then a few weeks later, VGP announced a reprint, and it has come down quite a bit. I think it's like $45-$46 right now, according to price charting. If you are a fan of Capcom, if you are a fan of like fighting game history, and you want to kind of go back and experience a lot of these forgotten Capcom games that don't really get much time in the limelight anymore, it's kind of a no-brainer collection. The fact that it even has a physical at all is surprising to me, right? Because you would think a collection like this of games that, frankly, they couldn't sell on their own, realistically, you would think a collection like this probably wouldn't do that well, but it actually did get a physical release, and for that I wanted to recommend it because the next game I want to talk about is another Capcom fighting collection, one that's not even out yet, but I wanted to talk about it now while it's up for pre-order, and that is the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics. So this is releasing physically in November. It already came out digitally, and it got really good reviews, and people seem to just love this collection. I've seen a lot of people say that this is like the best collection of games that Capcom has put out, not just in terms of like the quality of the games that are in the collection, but like it is just a very high quality, well done collection of these games. This physical game, this is going to be one of the most expensive Capcom games. I'm like 99% sure of that. Marvel Capcom games have a history of being delisted. This game is not safe for the inevitable future, I would say. This is a game that 5-10 years from now will probably get delisted. It is the fan favorite Marvel Capcom games, right? It is Marvel Capcom 2. There are a ton of other games in there, like the X-Men games. The physical release is probably going to be pretty limited because it's coming out after the digital release, which is where most of the hardcore fans that couldn't wait, right? Like, they're going to buy it digitally. They're not going to wait the 2 months. And to top it all off, the little cherry on top, the physical copies, in America anyway, are including a comic. Like, just a comic book. Oh, and also the other cherry on top, the European release is a code in the box. So you'll also be competing with European collectors that want to have an English copy of this game. The Japanese version will also have the game on the cartridge, but the American version and the Japanese version are the only way to do that. The European version will be a code in the box, which is so stupid. But yes, Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics is a game that is basically checking every box in my mind of a game that will probably get expensive. It will probably get delisted eventually. It is a late physical release. North America is the only region it's getting a proper physical release, whereas in Europe, it's not going to have a cartridge at all. So I wanted to include this one because if you are a fan of fighting games, but if you're also just a fan of Marvel and, you know, collecting Switch games, like this is one that is basically checking every box. So I wanted to include it now, even though it's not out yet, because you can still pre-order it, right? Like it's still available everywhere, and it might not get expensive immediately, right? Like this will probably take a couple years. My fortune-telling abilities kind of looking into the future here, not the immediate future, but this one has expensitive written all over it. I have to be honest, so I wanted to include it here since I was talking about the Capcom Fighting Collection anyway, because if you are a fan of Marvel vs. Capcom, you're gonna want to buy the physical copy of this. I promise you. Next up is one that I actually talked about last Sunday in my Games I Regret Not Buying Sooner video, and that is the Life is Strange Arcadia Bay collection. Now, I am personally going for a full set of Square Enix games, which I'm very close to. I'm missing a couple things like Chocobo Mystery Dungeon, which was another one of those Asia releases. I'm missing that, but for the most part, I'm there. Like, I have basically every Square Enix game published on Switch physically. One of them, however, is Life is Strange. Now, when you think of Square Enix, you're not thinking of Life is Strange, but I wanted to complete the set, and I actually do like Life is Strange. I'm not in love with Life is Strange. I like True Colors quite a bit, and Life is Strange 1 is fine for what it is, but I think it was back in 2022 they released this Life is Strange Arcadia Bay collection, and once again, kind of similar to the Spy Anya game, despite it having a pretty wide release. Like, it came out in America, came out in Europe, came out in Japan, I believe. It's actually kind of just hard to even find. Like, there's copies on eBay. I don't want to say it's hard to find. Like, you can go on eBay and buy a copy right now, but they're not as plentiful as you would expect, especially for Life is Strange, which is a very, very popular series. You can get the used copy of this for about $35, and the disclaimer there is that the Before the Storm, the prequel game, that is not on the cartridge, that is a download code, which is why used copies are a little bit cheaper. Now, frankly, it doesn't really matter if you get a newer used copy because the difference in price there is so massive. You can just buy Before the Storm digitally if you really want to. You can probably wait for a sale or something, right? But to get Life is Strange 1 on cartridge, you have to get the Life is Strange Arcadia Bay collection, and that is one that I don't really see anybody talk about. I'm not sure if the Switch ports of these games are very good. I mean, this game was on base PS4, so like I imagine they're fine on Switch. Honestly, those Life is Strange might have been on PS3. I'm not actually sure, but point is, Life is Strange Arcadia Bay collection, you don't see it in the wild very often, and there aren't that many copies listed on eBay, so if you are a Life is Strange fan, I would say this is one to keep an eye on. Next up is another indie game that I actually ordered but has not come in yet through Video Games Plus because they actually reprinted it, and I would say if you are interested in it, just go ahead and buy it because I think it's like $30 on VGP. So I've gotten a ton of comments over the past 2 months about an indie game called Signalis, which I had heard of, but I really didn't know much about. But so many people have told me to talk about Signalis, so I was like, okay, you know what? I ordered my copy. I could wait for it to come, but I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it in today's video because it's still available on Video Games Plus. This is a PS1 horror game in the style of the classic Resident Evils, and it went up like crazy back in, I believe, July, August. So it was a Humble Games release, so it was published by them. And I don't think the game got delisted or anything. For some reason, this physical copy just skyrocketed in price. I mean, Price Charting still has it as $90, even though you can get it for $30 right now. Like I said, it was going for like $150, $200 a couple weeks ago. And then they thankfully reprinted it very, very quickly through VGP. So I would say if this is one that looks interesting to you, go ahead and pick it up. I decided to order it from them because while I hadn't heard much about it, I didn't know too much about it. I knew the name, right? Watching a trailer for it after seeing all the comments about it on my videos, I was like, wow, this actually looks really good. I love classic Resident Evil. So this is definitely something that's like right up my alley. It's kind of like more sci-fi focused than a Resident Evil is. And yeah, this one's really cool. So if you are interested in Signalis, it maybe VGP will reprint it again down the line, right? Like that's definitely possible. It's possible for a lot of these games to get reprinted. But Signalis is currently in stock for like $30. It's never going to get cheaper than that, I would say. So if this is something that is interesting to you, maybe go ahead and go check out that as well. And finally, to close off this video is a series of games that I have talked about before in one of these videos, but I want to go more in depth on every single entry because they recently announced a remake of the first Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky game. This series has always been niche, but it's still like popular, right? Like Legend of Heroes is a popular series, but it's still like relatively comparatively niche. They are remaking the first game. It's going to be more accessible than ever now. More people are going to get into the series. I personally knew this day was coming, right? I bought a lot of these games knowing that eventually they would remake or re-release the Trails in the Sky game, which is the starting point. So I have every Legend of Heroes game here that is currently available on Switch, as well as a cat hair there. So I want to talk about these a little bit in depth because, yeah, like I said, they announced a remake of the first Trails in the Sky game in the Nintendo Direct last month in August, and that game is coming out in 2025. And with that being the entry point to the series, we are going to see so many new fans hop on the Legend of Heroes series, and I just feel like when that happens, you're going to see a lot more people being like, oh, dang, I wish I had bought all of these other Legend of Heroes games because there are so many on Switch, and I'm not going to pretend to know the nuance here. I'm not going to pretend to know all the differences between each version or where they originally came from, but I wanted to go over every release that is in the series because, I mean, they're already expensive now. These games are already above MSRP for the most part with one exception. Imagine that, but then when a whole new group of fans hop on board because they are finally remaking and re-releasing the first game in the series. So this is a series of games kind of like Yakuza that I've always wanted to get into, but it's just been so daunting because there are so many games. And the thing with the Legend of Heroes series, the Trail series, from my understanding, they're all connected. There are different arcs, like there's the Crossbell arc, there's the Cold Steel arc, obviously, that's the most popular one. But the point is, they're all connected. It's one huge story, kind of like Yakuza is. But I would argue, based on what I know, it's more important for this. Like, you can jump into a modern Yakuza game and figure out what's going on, and I'm sure you can do that with these other Trails games, but everything I've seen, it feels like the story is much more interconnected, so you kind of have to play every game in the series. People say, oh, you can start with Trails through Daybreak, and that may be true, but I'm one of those people that I like to start from the beginning. So the fact that they're finally remaking Trails from the Sky the First makes me very, very happy, because I've been waiting to jump onto the series for so freaking long. So starting off here, this is the cheapest one. I think VGP must have reprinted it not too long ago, but these are all published by NIS America, by the way. So we have Trails of Cold Steel 3 Extracurricular Edition. This is the first one that released on Switch, and it goes for about $30. Now, what's unfortunate is, I hope this gets resolved at some point. They actually did release Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2 on Switch physically, only in Japan, because I believe it's Xseed or maybe Falcom just published it themselves. Basically, different publisher. There's a whole publisher war with the series, I believe. So, Cold Steel 1 and 2 have a physical on Switch. They released on Switch. There is no English version of them on Switch, not even digitally, which is a huge shame, and I really hope they figure that out eventually, because that'd be so annoying if we get every single Trails game on Switch in America, except for Cold Steel 1 and 2. They are available on PS4, I believe, so there is a modern way to play them, but you're watching this video, you probably want them on Switch, so I really, really hope they solve that little issue there. We also have Trails of Cold Steel 4 here. This is the end of the Cold Steel kind of arc here. I believe this is the most expensive one on Switch, or it's close to it. This one goes for like $70 right now, so we're already talking about games that are above MSRP. Then we get to when they started re-releasing games. Now, I'm not sure the original platforms for all these. I think most of them were PSP games. Starting with Trails from Zero, this is the second most expensive. This one's going for like $75, I think. This one came out back in 2022 on Switch. Then we also had Trails from Azure, or Trails to Azure. So both of these games here, my understanding, my baby brain understanding of the Trail series, I know a lot of people watching this video are more familiar with it than me. This is like the Crossbell arc, right? Because it's this guy. I don't know who that is, and I cannot wait to know who that is. I cannot wait to play all these games and understand all of these characters and everything. So that's the Crossbell arc. It's Trails from Zero and Trails to Azure. But then we get into some of the newer stuff here with Trails into Reverie. This one is, I believe, about $60. So this one just came out last year, so already above MSRP. Then we have Trails through Daybreak. This one just came out in July. This one's already, I would say it's above MSRP. It is MSRP. Like, you can still get this copy new on Amazon, I'm pretty sure, or Best Buy. But the thing with these games is they don't really go down. They just don't go down. In some cases, they do. With Cold Steel 3, that game is like $30 right now. But for the most part, a Trails game comes out, and then it just slowly goes up. That's basically what's happened for every game in the series. So if you are interested in these games, maybe you've already played some of them, but you don't own them physically, I would say get them now before the Trails in the Sky remake. Now, to be fair, it's always a possibility. There will likely be a newfound popularity of the series. Maybe NIS America will capitalize on that and reprint all of them. That is totally possible. I would not bet on that, personally. I would not be willing to make that gamble. So I have already bought all of these, even though I have not played any of them, because I know I will love this series. People always say, I'm a huge fan of JRPGs. I'm going to like the Trails games. I know I will. From everything I've seen, they look really high quality. So I've been kind of buying them as they go. There is one final game here. This is a spinoff, The Legend of Nayuta, Boundless Trails. Once again, another one that is like $60. This is a PSP game that came to Switch. So there's a lot of Legend of Heroes games on Switch, a lot of Trails games. And basically, point is, the reason I'm mentioning them again in this video, with the remake of Trails in the Sky the First coming, unless NIS America decides to reprint all of them, which I doubt, they're going to get more expensive than they already are, and almost all of them are already above MSRP. Also, on top of everything that I just covered, there's also Trails through Daybreak 2 releasing in February. That came out a couple years ago in Japan, but is finally getting localized, I believe, in February. And then we also have a new game that just released in Japan on PS5. I don't think a Switch version of that is announced. That might be saved for Switch 2. And then, yeah, we'll have the remake next year as well. So not just what's released, there's also just a lot coming. So if you're interested in the Trail series, I would say, at the very least, start mentally prepping yourself to get into a 10-plus game JRPG series that will take you years to catch up on. So that is going to do it for today's video. Of course, if you enjoyed, please consider subscribing, liking the video, and let me know your suggestions in the comments as well. If you have any other games that you think would apply for a video like this, what games do you think I should include in the next episode? I would love to hear what you all think down in the comments below. Of course, subscribe here, follow me on Twitter @BoTalksGames, check out my Nintendo news channel @BoTalksGames as well, and until next time, folks, peace.